All right, welcome. No need to adjust your calendars. This really is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. It's 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling this Port of Olympia Commission meeting to order. And if you would all stand and join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Commission, we have an agenda in front of us this evening. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion?
I would like to move the item H1 to the action other calendar, so make it maybe H2. It could be H1 as well. So we can have public comment on that specific item.
So you are motioning to move action calendar item number 1 to action other calendar item number 3.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment to the agenda. Is there any discussion on the amendments? Sarah, anything?
I would just say if my fellow commissioner would like to hear public comment, then I think that we should do that.
Okay. All right, no other discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of amending the agenda to move item H1 to become item I3. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have an approved agenda.
Need to now vote on the amended agenda.
Excuse me, we don't quite have an amended agenda yet. So we have an amendment. Is there any other discussion on the agenda? Hearing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote on the approval of the amended agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Now we have an approved agenda. Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment. Individual public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Members of the public may comment on agenda items and other port business. Guidelines for public comment can be found in the Commission Rules in Resolution 2022-09, Article 6. Comments should be directed to the Commission as a whole and should not include comments about individual port staff or members of the public. All speakers shall be courteous in language and demeanor and shall confine remarks to those facts that are germane and relevant to the question or issue under discussion. All right, so I have a list of folks wishing to give public comment, and first up is Carla Wolfsburg. Did I miss something? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I skipped right over the executive director report.
We can just move right in public comment.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on with public comment then. Carla Wolfsburg, you are first up to give public comment.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Carla Wolfsburg. I'm a 37-year resident of Thurston County, and I now live in Tumwater. And this public comment is to address what is now the H3 under Action Other about the 2024 capital amendment budget regarding the Marine Terminal Warehouse. So I'm here tonight to express my extreme dissatisfaction about your flawed process to inform me and the public about what is to become a $4 million investment in a new warehouse at the marine terminal. Not only does this investment and your potential investment in the waterfront center near Swantown Marina circumvent, if not negate, the validity of the master planning process for the Port Peninsula, but it perpetuates a negative and undemocratic port tradition to keep its constituents in the dark about development projects. That's a real lack of transparency. So my right to be informed is codified in a state law, the revised Code of Washington 42.56.0.30, which says, and I quote, "The people of this state do not yield sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. The people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may maintain control over the instruments that they have created." That's the end quote. So I ask that you finally put an end to the port's history and current procedure of willfully withholding information from your constituents. We want a full disclosure in writing with comprehensive details about port projects, including their cumulative environmental impacts in an EIS, which has not been included in either of those projects, which can directly impact our quality of life. We contribute $7.5 million in tax levy to the port, and as residents of Thurston County deserve to be informed and provided opportunities to have public discussions with you about each project in a timely manner, not just one commissioner initiating a town hall only 6 days before you take a vote, as was in the case of the new warehouse town hall, and 2 commissioners weren't even there. So because your public process has been so flawed, I ask that you vote against the $1 million capital budget amendment tonight. And in addition, I ask that you honor the master planning process and decisions about Port Peninsula to include all your constituents living today in Thurston County, not just those in the 2018 Vision 2020 project. And I want you to include all of them in the planning of the future of the marine terminal and the Port Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westberg. I just want to make sure Rod Edgeberg signed in, but he didn't click or check the public comment box. Did you want to give public comment? Yes. Yeah, why don't you go ahead, then you can be up there next.
Rod Edgebert, 64-year resident of Olympia, residence 441 Summit Lake Shore Road. I'm here to speak in favor of the warehouse. I spoke at the town hall. I'm a previous longshoreman out of Local 47 here in Olympia. I was elevated to foreman about 13 years ago, which gives me the opportunity to work in every port in Puget Sound. I can safely say there is no more warehousing in Puget Sound. Port of Seattle has Terminal 5, has one warehouse, and it is probably half a mile from the dock. So being able to dray cargo from the vessel to the warehouse or vice versa is a considerable effort. Aberdeen has a few small warehouses that, I mean, they're not really even good for much of anything other than storing equipment in. Having the opportunity here in Olympia, as Option has pointed out, the movement of cargo has gone mostly containerized, but there's a lot of cargo out there that can't go in containers or can be transferred more economically in break bulk commodities. Break bulk products typically need warehousing. The pulp that we have here now is one of those products. And what my understanding is, they're looking for more opportunity to bring more product here. Every time I've worked a vessel here, you look at the stow plan of the ship, underneath the cargo we discharge, there's 3 or 4 other ports that it's going to. Everywhere from California to the East Coast. So if there's possibility of consolidating that here in Olympia and being able to get that work, I think it's beneficial. Again, nobody is building warehouses anymore because everything's containerized. But what that does is it makes the opportunity in a port that does have warehouse or space to put up a warehouse very opportunistic and quite valuable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Edgebert. Ryan Schwartz. You have the floor, sir.
It's Schmelz, but I'll let it pass. That's a hard name.
Sorry.
My name is Ryan Schmelz, and I am the political chair of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council. I was thrilled to hear that a contract for the hardworking men and women of ILWU 47B is finally here. It's been a very long fight, and it's a sign that our local labor movement is growing. A lot of people in our community are achieving different victories that we haven't seen in many years. At the same time, I'm sure many of you have heard rumblings of economic downturn on the way. Inflation, different types of hardship, and even now times are pretty grim for a lot of people between housing costs and basic groceries. Dependable, reliable local jobs need to be kept and expanded now more than ever before for the safety and health of our city and our local community. The rumors of an effort to potentially close the port are completely bewildering to me. The potential opening of the new marine terminal warehouse is evidence of an actual increased need and use of our port that will inevitably rise as the South Sound continues to become more interconnected and commerce continues to flow into the region. Even more than that, the Port of Olympia is part of our local identity and history. The thought that we might lose the port or its workers in any capacity at all to make way for callow, gentrifying commercial interests is deeply upsetting to me. The timing of such a proposal would reek of punishing honest workers who fought for years for a fair contract only to have it ripped away right after ratification. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that our port workers deserve a lot better than that, and the residents of this community in general deserve better than that. As the political chair of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council, I pledged to fight for the interests of working families with all means at my disposal. And so I call on each of you to support the contract for the ILWU 47B, the creation for the marine terminal warehouse, and to oppose any attempts to close our port and cause a loss of any port jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schmautz. Kent Markley.
Good evening, Port Commission. Hold on. Ryan's a lot taller than me. Good evening, Port Commission. My name is Kent Markley. I'm also with the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council, where I'm a delegate on behalf of WFSE Local 443, which is the labor union for state workers in the area. I am here to advocate for the passage of ILWU's contract. Like my predecessor said before me, the port workers of this community deserve a lot better than what they're currently getting, and I want to congratulate the Port of Olympia for coming to a good contract decision with them, and I encourage you to approve them. Given the circumstances of the last month, I think that there are a lot of people in this community who are looking for something that they can do in these really turbulent and really worrying times. One thing that we can do, something that is in our control, is to be able to support organized labor. Organized labor is the backbone of the middle class. It is the backbone of any effective society in a rapidly globalizing world. And so I appreciate you all for working together with our local organized labor, and I encourage you to pass that. Likewise, you should build a warehouse. Seems good to me. I think the fact that this is a really packed room and that there's a lot of people who appear to have a lot of feelings about it indicates that any accusations that RCW 4256 would be applicable here, I'm not legal advice. That seems a bit silly to me. I encourage you to vote yes on both of these things, and I really appreciate our cooperation.
Thank you, Mr. Markley. Lee Reiner.
Thank you for having this discussion tonight on this temporary marine terminal warehouse. Many of us in this room have been coming and begging the Port of Olympia to give a decent wage to our union workers. We've come for the last 2 or 3 years begging, and the port has dragged their feet, giving these union workers nothing until recently. So not only do they want to do this tonight, but also this vinyl marine warehouse, it's temporary. They want to put it right next to the Bud Inlet. It's made out of vinyl, but we're going to spend $4 million for it. If we're going to spend $4 million, why can't we have a decent building? Oh yeah, the Port of Olympia is rushing this because they can't seem to get a permit. They didn't plan. We've asked for years for the Port of Olympia to have a master plan. Year after year after year. Oh, it's going to come. Oh, it's going to come. It never comes, does it? So, you know, I think the ability to trust the port has been extremely eroded. And many of us have been attending these meetings. Oh, the port says, we're going to make a lot of money here. Oh, it's going to go sky high. Well, if you look at the curves, when they get money and when they don't get money, when they get money, they don't get money over years, like many of us have been attending these meetings. Bottom line, the taxpayer has been supporting, subsidizing this Port of Olympia to the tune of $2 million a year. So what about the people who can't pay their taxes? What about the people who can't pay their rent because these taxes go higher and higher and higher? Yeah, Port of Olympia has these bonds they have to pay off, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees for borrowed money. The Port of Olympia, just like the City of Olympia, just like Thurston County, they all keep having these bonds so that future generations have to pay this. I support unions. I've been in here and I've supported unions for years. Now you're putting this new vinyl warehouse, a temporary warehouse that's going to need a concrete pad right on Bud Inlet. We have a degraded water body right over here. It's full of jellyfish. There is no oxygen. The animals are dying, but yet you have all these reasons why this is going to be a wonderful idea. It's not a wonderful idea. Do you have the courage to vote no? I doubt it. You know, I've seen you guys, you all vote in lockstep. We got to be together. Nobody's going to be different. We're all going to vote in lockstep. Well, that's the way the port has been doing this for 20 years. And for 20 years, we keep paying $2 million in to support, to subsidize. We, the taxpayers, are subsidizing this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reiner. Next is Janet Jordan.
Hi, I'm Janet Jordan. I've been a resident of Olympia for 22 years. I don't know too much about port affairs, but I do know that it gets a subsidy of several $1 million from the taxpayers every year. And I know that I struggle to pay that tax for myself. I'm not willing to have it go for anything speculative. Understand you don't yet have a contract with the people who would be using the warehouse, and I would be against building it until I had a contract. I also think a warehouse is a bad idea on the port on the Port Peninsula, because many ideas have been suggested by citizens for recreation and for restoring the natural environment on the Port Peninsula. This doesn't go with those. It's not compatible. I wonder if you've thought it through enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Matt Bell.
Hi there. Matt Bell. I moved here 10 years ago. And I specifically moved here to work at the port, where I spend most of my time working, but I do work in the entire Puget Sound, and there are no other places that have warehouses like here. So having another one will bring in more business. If it was built 10 years ago when I first moved here, when it was already kind of in the process, it would have been full this entire time. I literally deal with the customers who want to come here. They want to come here. They don't want to go to Grays Harbor. They don't want to go to Everett. They don't want to go to Longview. They want to come here. They want to work with our labor. They want to work with the Port of Olympia. So this warehouse is going to go on a piece of ground that is already covered in asphalt. It's already going to go into the stormwater. Makes sense to me. It's going to bring in more business. I can guarantee it because it already would have had more business if it was built. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Eli Skillman.
Eli Skillman, 42-year resident of Christian County, and I'm president of Local 47, the Longshore Division. I wanted to talk about the product a little bit. The eucalyptus pulp goes into products that are basically recession proof that every one of us uses every day, and it gets sold at every box store up and down the coast. Suzano's been coming to the West Coast for many, many years. And selling to mills in Oregon, Washington, other locations. They've been looking for a location like ours for quite a while. They've tried other ports. They really want to grow here. And I just want to say it's really refreshing to have other labor brothers here. This marine terminal, it creates tens of millions of dollars every year in income for workers. Most of that money comes from out of this area and a lot of it out of this country. That would be really difficult to replace if this marine terminal weren't there. So with this warehouse, we have the opportunity to add to our workforce. These are jobs that people can really raise a family with. So with that being said, I ask you to do the responsible thing and approve this warehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Skillman. Next on the list is Richard Korn.
Good evening, everybody. Port Commission. I came to speak about the importance of the warehouse, but considering the ratification of the contract for Local 47B is on the agenda, I strongly urge you to ratify that or vote that up because I've been close to the negotiations for a really long time. I've been around those workers on my own personal time. I don't really know them all very well personally, but I do see them in passing. I have had conversations with them. I just totally on their side. But it doesn't make the port look good when, they market the idea of family wage jobs, and then it's got to be so difficult for them to get what I don't think was unreasonable things to ask for. That is something you've thought of already, I'm sure. As far as the warehouse goes, I'm sure Ms. Wolfsburg remembers about 10 years ago, we had warehouse 2 or warehouse B, I don't remember. Blueprints, everything approved, ready to go. Customer, declining market, all that stuff kind of pulled out. I believe the Port Commission decided, well, why spend the money? I don't remember. They were probably going into debt over that one, but I would think if we had the warehouse for 10 years, like Mr. Bell mentioned, the things that Option said that he's turned away, like steel, rice, et cetera, we would have been able to handle during that time, and it would have paid for itself already. And I think the numbers on this one are going to show that it's totally worth it. And like Eli said, I think there's a responsibility to the working people of this county, and we really anchor this place. I don't care what any professional managerial type people want to say that importance of whatever over working for a living, but I think this is really what pays the bills around here. So I urge you to vote up the warehouse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rochelle Martin.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Martin. I'm the president of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council. We represent 26,000 union members in our area, and I'm here to strongly advocate for the ratification of the contract that is in front of you. It's been such a long process, and there's no reason to keep going with it. So please ratify that. And I would also urge you to make a really great decision about the warehouse for just it would be such an act of retaliation against the people that have won their contract, which is illegal and would open up the port for a pretty massive lawsuit. So even if you're just looking at it really pragmatically of how do you save money, retaliating against my union siblings is not the way to go. So I would urge you to strongly consider the warehouse. It sounds like there's quite a bit of work to go through to get that done. And it sounds like you're only earmarking $1 million and not actually spending anything. So there's no reason to vote it down because now you're just exploring the option of it. So again, I would urge you to ratify the contract that's in front of you and also strongly consider and also set aside those funds for a warehouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Michael Whalen.
Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Michael Whalen. I am a community and political organizer with United Food and Commercial Workers Local 367. I'm here urging you all today to ratify the contract with the hardworking people here at the port. And just like to say that Local 367 stands in solidarity with ILWU here at the Port of Olympia. And then in addition to urging you all to sign the contract, speaking in favor of the warehouse and bringing good jobs here to the city of Olympia, and think it would be a good idea here in Olympia. So please sign the contract. You know, it's been years, so these workers have been through a lot, and I think it would just be a really, really great thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Rob Rose.
Good evening, Rob Rose. I just wanted to thank the current port leadership for turning everything around and actually getting us a contract for you guys to ratify. And so I really hope that you guys do ratify that. And it was a pleasure to work with them, and we look forward to working with them in the future. And it was a big change from where we started. So I very much appreciate that. I also wanted to mention on the warehouse, I appreciated the town hall meeting the other day and the information that was provided. And I think that looking at the numbers on that were given to us, the investment in the warehouse, given that it pays for itself within 6 years, is an opportunity that the port really needs to take advantage of. These opportunities don't come that often. And so when they do, I would hope that the commission here would vote yes on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Michael Cade.
Good evening, Michael Cade, resident at 3526 Holiday Drive, Southeast Olympia. I'm also the executive director of the Thurston Economic Development Council. Thank you. I was here the other evening for the open house. I'm here to speak on the warehouse opportunity. I was here at the open house the other night. Really wanted to thank you for that conversation. It was good to see and hear the dialogue, and it allowed me to take notes, go back to my office, kind of scribble some ideas out and do a little bit of research. And some of the things that I wanted to convey to you is to urge you to move forward. And some of the things that kind of led me to the conclusion was the notion of how our economy operates. Our economy, when I moved here in 2004, was about 60% of the wages were earned in public sector, which is, it's okay. It's just a thing, right? And it's 40%. So in the private sector today, it's about 60% private sector, 40% public sector. We've worked very, very hard in this community to diversify our economy. Last year, we received several national rankings, and you probably saw them. We kind of pushed them out. We're very proud of it. The Milken Institute identified as number 4 in the nation as a metropolitan statistical area. More analytics out of Florida actually identified as number 2 in the nation for vibrancy and income equality. There was an article in the Seattle Times last week identifying this region as a very, very highly ranking community with income equality. This is really good stuff. And I would submit to you that a lot of that has to do with the diversification that we have created in this community. What you're talking about tonight is exactly the continuation of that strategy, is diversify our local economy. We used to have a lot of effort in one area of our economy, and that isn't the case anymore. And I would continue to urge you to continue that process. The other thing I was thinking about is the multipliers that we have right now. Warehouse distribution right now is about 3% vacancy rate. Those are the numbers I pulled for the third quarter for Puget Sound. Of all the areas in the central Puget Sound region, Thurston County is the lowest. So when a warehouse is built, it's consumed. It doesn't necessarily imbue itself to other things. It's just a thing, right? But I will tell you that there is a market for it. The port is positioning itself to take advantage of that market and an entryway into the notion that we're going to continue to diversify. These are pretty significant employment opportunities. I don't really hate to use the multiplier that I came across, but it's about 3.5 to 1. So every job you create within that sector is about 3.5. And I'll have to go back and I'll get back to Alex on that. But that's a pretty significant multiplier when you think about those opportunities. That facility that you'll have out there is exactly in keeping with what you already have in a working waterfront. It's good. It's a good investment to do. Thank you for your consideration. And again, thank you for the community dialogue that happened last week. I appreciate it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cade. Joel Hanson.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff. I'm Joel Hanson. I've lived all my 49 years in Thurston County, and I'm a neighbor to the port out in Tumwater. We share a property line out there. I also will say I'm the chair of the Port Citizens Advisory Committee, but I am here speaking just as myself and not representing the committee in any way. Couple of thoughts I jotted down before I came over here. First, I think it's really unfair to blame the current commission and the current staff members for decisions that were made before you were here. Many of you have been here less than 3 years, and to paint you with a brush about decisions that were made before you got here, I just think it's unserious and it's not productive. So having said that, and to that point, Mr. Rose's comment that he thinks that, you know, somebody who works with the port day in, day out, thinks there's been a real change. And I think that's indicative of what we have going here. I've interacted with a lot of the staff members in the last year as the chair of the POCAC. We've got a really good team and they're doing good things. And I think we're heading in the right direction as the Port of Olympia. And so the second point I would have is trust your people. They do this stuff day in and day out. They're good at it. I trust Afshin when he presents the information that he did at the community meeting. And it looks like this is actually a pretty good opportunity to build this warehouse and see a payback in a really short amount of time. I've talked to some of you commissioners. I was asked in passing, what do you think about this? And I said, you know, my gut normally is don't ever be forced into an opportunity by time pressure. But that was before I knew the details. And I came to the community meeting. I saw some of the presentation from staff, from Afshin, and I've changed my mind on this. I think that this is an opportunity that should be taken advantage of. I work with public entities, cities, counties, state agencies on capital projects in my day job, energy efficiency projects, clean energy projects. And if we get a payback period of less than 20 years, it's amazing. The idea that this warehouse could pay for itself in 6 years or less is unheard of to me in my work. So something to take into account. Just to note, if we don't want to support the marine terminal with our tax dollars, the marine terminal needs to generate revenue. This is an opportunity to do that. It looks like a really good opportunity. You've got a current customer that wants to increase their business. I think this is something that I would suggest you support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Bob Jacobs is next.
Good evening, Bob Jacobs, 720 Governor Stevens Avenue, Olympia. Since we're all saying how long we've lived here, I am a 50-year resident. I'm a public policy analyst by profession. I have no personal stake in this, just interested in having good public policy. As far as this proposal for a waterfront warehouse is concerned, at last Thursday's town hall, I mentioned my concerns about the risks involved in the proposed second waterfront warehouse. A subsequent speaker said that everything has risks, and at least implied that we should therefore not worry about risks. Well, he's right on the first thing. Everything we do involves risks, including getting out of bed in the morning. He's definitely wrong on the second one. How huge is the insurance industry? Because we all are willing to pay money to handle our risks. For the proposed warehouse gambit to succeed, a lot of things would have to go right. Business decisions by Suzano, which market to enter, what transportation to use, who to deal with, and on and on. Decisions by other ports. How aggressive are they going to get to steal this business from Olympia? Decisions by end users, which inputs to use in their production processes. What about technological innovations that could make the product obsolete overnight? And what about economic downturns? The stories we've heard about the past are very, very rosy and very inaccurate. Having been here 50 years and keeping an eye on the port, I remember a year when there was just one ship in a whole year. Another time when the warehouse held just the Lake Fair float. Sad little thing down in the corner. That's it for a long period of time. This warehouse, if we had the data on it, the existing warehouse probably has been a very bad deal. All of these things add up to a lot of risk, and $4 million is a lot of money for a small port to risk. If this were my money, I wouldn't do it. I urge you to think hard about this. If it were your money, would you make this investment? Think about the many, many ways that the deal could go sour. And think about the residents of Thurston County whose money you're considering risking. It seems too risky to me. What would your other constituents say about it if they knew all the risks involved?
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Debbie Patton is next.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'll just hold it. I'm short. So 42-year resident of District 3 and a member of the POCAC. I'm on the new Economic Development Subcommittee. And I just wanted to let you all know that the POCAC or that subcommittee has not yet discussed this because we haven't had a meeting since the last Thursday's town hall, but 4 of the 5 members of the committee have independently spoken in favor of this warehouse proposal between last week and tonight. So the majority of us and probably all of us are definitely in favor of this warehouse. I spoke at the town hall meeting last Thursday, and I mentioned that which Mr. Korn also referenced just a few minutes ago, that we have turned down, the port has turned down contracts for cargo because we did not have warehouse space. We've turned down steel. Obviously, you know, steel will rust if it's out in the rain, has to be undercover. We've turned down rice, other cargo has to be undercover. We don't have enough warehouse space. During COVID, we could have had business galore if we had had warehouse space, which we did not have. So we're just losing revenue. So we should build this temporary warehouse. If for some reason, as time goes by, we don't need it anymore, it's a portable building. It can be taken down and used elsewhere. I heard at the town hall meeting that it could be used for sporting events. It could be used for temporary warehouse space at other ports or municipalities. It just seems like to me a great option. I do believe that during COVID that the current warehouse we have now was used to build tiny homes for unhoused members of our community. They built them there in that space undercover. So I just think we need to do this. We should not, like President Aiel mentioned last Thursday, we shouldn't just let the marine terminal hibernate and turn down business when we could make considerable money. I spoke a few weeks ago about taxes, and I mentioned at that time that my home in West Olympia is in the higher category of taxation or valuation, and I pay only like, what did I say, $65? And it's like $65 for the whole year. I mean, that's like, you can't even go out to dinner for two people for $65. So it's worth it to me. So hope it is to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patton. Is there anybody on Zoom?
We have Dean on Zoom.
How many?
We have two people on Zoom. Dean is the first one.
Janine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good evening. First of all, on this issue that if you build a warehouse, they will come. Listen, I've been on many a port tour in which the warehouse was anything but full of product. And if that were even true, the port would be more profitable than it is, and it has been. For the record, I too have no personal stake in this. I just want good public policy. But what I really came here to talk about is how the port has gone about this process regarding the warehouse. It's not unfamiliar. Putting the cart before the horse runs off, leave the cart sitting in the middle of a dirt patch. This is really old practice here. But I encourage you to prove that you're not like the old guard. If you do seem willing to suspend the master planning process for this warehouse, which you've talked at length about for nearly a year, you say the port uses the Vision 2050 and Destination Waterfront surveys as your guide to developing the future Port Peninsula, but there's no mention from the public about wanting a big white tent that seems to go on for half a mile. What they did say is they wanted access to the waterfront. They want a clean environment, public amenities, recreation, walking paths, varied family wage jobs, open space, and for you to deal with sea level rise. They did not want an environmental cleanup just so you could dredge the channel, only to order and plead and compete and give sweetheart deals to extraction industries just to get their ships here. This seems crazy. To many of us looking closely into this, it's another rescue technique for the marine terminal that's been on life support for decades, to give legitimacy to an entity which hasn't been carrying itself for a long while. Port commissioners promised a presentation for Mr. Afson in October, which never materialized. Isn't this the protocol? What happened to that? The port hasn't engaged the community about the eucalyptus product. Suzano ships a monocultured crop from very far away Brazil that well may be replacing much needed rainforest restorations, harming native species, and we now know that shipping harms marine mammals. Yet we're fine with bringing a product we throw into our toilets thousands of miles away from its source. Here's an idea one of our community members mentioned at the town hall. Engage Eastern Washington in hemp products, which could do the same and much, much, much more. If our environmentally conscious commissioners could please answer to that, I would really appreciate it. Suzano says they must have more warehouse space to continue shipping to the port, and they seem to need this without offering a written long-term contract. And they'll also need to know that the mills will be able to process their product. We're willing to spend $4 million on a verbal promise, which also entails promises from other companies, which we have no control over. The desperation here to have a break-even cargo is painful to watch, but again, it's nothing new. We hear there are other ports competing for this cargo. Longview may be a contender, and they're actually close to the mill for this product in Camas. Let them have it. Think of all the trucks we'd keep off of I-5. That sounds like a no-brainer to me. Let's get out of this competition. We are not players here, and no amount of wishing will make it so. Give the waterfront to the people. Bring friendly, attractive, accessible structure and activity to the Port Peninsula. Bring vision. Why aren't you giving the people what they really asked you for?
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. We had another hand up.
Yes, Harry Branch.
Mr. Branch, you have the floor, sir. Mr. Branch, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yep, you're all set.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm specifically concerned about the importing of eucalyptus pulp. A friend recently wrote what he calls a love song for the end of the world. It begins with the line, "Hear me out, it's all for nothing. We're past the point of no return." I have to ask myself, is that true? Could we transform the Amazon rainforest into the Sahara Desert? After all, eucalyptus plantations growing in regions spanning South America have significant detrimental impacts on local communities and biodiversity. They rob regions of water, destroy wildlife habitat, and transform large swaths of biodiverse tropical biome into unnatural monoculture. Row after row of non-native eucalyptus trees without vegetation in their understory. The ecological impacts are incalculable. Genetically engineered traits make the trees more profitable for pulp and paper industries, but are harmful to the natural environment. The Campaign to Stop GE Trees is an international alliance of organizations, including the Global Justice Ecology Project and the World Rainforest Movement. I believe that's where our hope for any future lies. What we do here has broader ramifications. We live in one world. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Branch. Is that any other hands?
Or I've got John Newman on the phone or on Zoom.
Who is it?
John Newman.
John Newman.
Yes, sir. Hello, commissioners. How are you tonight?
Good. You have the floor, sir.
Great. My comments are about the portable warehouse. I don't think the $4 million expenditure by the Port of Olympia for a portable terminal warehouse should be approved. The port will have to bury the funds. The port will have to borrow the funds and therefore increase taxes. The temporary nature of the warehouse is problematic. It needs a concrete platform and it'll cost over $400,000 just to take it down or move it. There's been no business plan for the public to review and very little transparency. The entire project is a gamble. The business that wants this temporary warehouse uses eucalyptus for paper. They bring in eucalyptus for paper from South America. Where's the long-term market? I think the pharaohs of Egypt were given eucalyptus leaves for their afterlife in the pyramids. If this becomes another losing proposition for the port, the pyramid builders and taxpayers may revolt. We cannot go forward with the questionable expenditure. This is a rushed decision and a flawed decision. I'd also like to add that for the union members, for longshoremen, to increase their hours, the port should require that shipping owners should pay for longshoremen to operate the cranes on the ships that discharge the cargo, as longshoremen are paid in Tacoma and Seattle. It'll be a job creator. Another comment is that the port, I know it's a previous administration, tore down one of the largest warehouses in Puget Sound a number of years ago, and the land sat empty for, I think, over a decade. So jumping into another warehouse situation, I don't think is amenable to the taxpayers of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. All right, well, we've actually gone over time for public comment, but I think hopefully everybody got the opportunity. We do really appreciate everybody's comment and taking the time to let your feelings be known. Now, to correct my gross misjudgment, can we go back and ask the Executive Director Smith for her report?
Oh, okay. I can do it quickly because I know we've got a lot on the calendar tonight. All right, so commissioners, yesterday we celebrated Veterans Day. We wanted to recognize and thank our veterans who work at the Port of Olympia, Warren Hendrickson, Frank Boss, and Tim Salee. Tim's here in the audience today. Just wanted to recognize their service and thank them for their service. We also wanted to recognize Jamie Songer. She was one of the office administrators, I guess, over at the Swantown Marina. She has been promoted to the boatyard administrator over at Swantown Boat Works. And so we're very excited for Jamie and for Zach Ballou and the Boat Works crew. So congrats, Jamie. She's already started over there. So go say hi. And then just as folks have mentioned, we held the town hall last week and we very much appreciate Commissioners Isle, Sanderson, Tong being there. We understand Commissioners Harding and Savada had conflicts. They were out of town. But we appreciate everybody coming and sharing their perspective, and the conversations that were had, I thought were very helpful. And so thanks for everybody who came out. We wanted to highlight one of our tenants. We've been trying to do this periodically. This month's tenant is Royal Mart. They are within, I think, S&S Petroleum. Since opening their first gas station in 1998, they've expanded to over 100 locations across Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho. They were recently ranked number 61 on CSP Magazine's of top 2023 convenience store chains. They are headquartered in Mukilteo, Washington, so they're a Washington company. They provided outstanding service and convenience for over 20 years. Their Olympia location opened in 2023, and we're very excited to have them as one of our port tenants. Also wanted to mention we will be joining the Thurston County Chamber Forum, a number of us here from the port, and the topic this month is the Great Wealth Transfer. And ideally, the goal is to figure out ways to ensure that the wealth remains within Thurston County to support our thriving local community. So we look forward to doing that. And then we provide lots of public comment opportunities and look forward to folks connecting with us through any of these means. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Executive Director Smith. Is there any questions, comments for the report? No? All right. Agenda, we'll jump up to the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, which is minutes for the meetings from October 21st, 2024 and October 28th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Calling for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar passes. Motion passes. There's nothing under the pending issues or business this evening. We've moved the action calendar item to action other, so we'll jump into the first item under action other calendar, which is ILWU 47B contract ratification 2024 through 2027. Alex Smith, you'll take the lead on this.
Hey, thank you, Commissioners. This is an action other, and we are bringing to you the ILWU 47B contract. We're requesting that the Commission ratify the recently negotiated contract. It's a collective bargaining agreement with the newly created ILWU 47B. So 47B is an affiliate of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. The local labor union organized in 2021, and the contract negotiations began in 2022. This is the first contract that we've negotiated with this union. The membership includes 14 full-time employees at Swantown Marina and Boat Works and the Olympia Regional Airport. The term of the contract would be November 12th, 2024 through December 31st, 2027. It includes 31 articles. Some of those articles are things like rights and responsibilities of union members and the employer, schedules, work hours, wages, leave, holidays, pension benefits, working conditions, how we handle disputes, subcontracting and when we're allowed to do that, joint labor relations committees, and a training program. And I've got a suggested motion for you, but before that, wanted to recognize the members of the negotiating team for 47B, Rob Rhodes, Damien Egan, Quentin Vicarious, Steve Mobius, Tim Salee and Eli Skillman, all of whom I think are here tonight, which is exciting. On the management side, we had Warren Hendrickson and Ben McDonald, along with help from mediators from PERC, Guy Koss, and in particular, huge kudos to Erin Sloan Gomez, the mediator who really helped us get this over the finish line. So super excited to have it for you tonight.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments from the commission? If not, just checking if there's any more further public comment on the ILWU 47B contract ratification.
No raised hands on Zoom.
There's none?
None.
All right,
I move to ratify the ILWU Local 47B collective bargaining agreement with the Port of Olympia for the time period of November 12, 2024 through December 31, 2027.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to ratify the ILWU Local 47B collective bargaining agreement with the Port of Olympia for the time period of November 12th, 2024 through December 31st, 2027. Any further conversation or discussion on this motion?
I would just say our team is the backbone of this organization, and I'm so excited we're here. And I agree, we are turning the page at the Port of Olympia, and this is just one example of that. And yay, let's keep working together.
Very exciting. Thank you all for the public comment.
All right, hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of ratifying the ILWU Local 47B collective bargaining agreement with the Port of Olympia for the time period of November 12th, 2024 through December 31st, 2027, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations. All right, very good. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the second item under action other is technical account CPA contract extension. Tad Koff, Director of Finance. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tad Koff, Director of Finance, Port of Olympia. First off, I'll apologize. This got on the agenda with such short notice. It was a stopgap, truly a stopgap looking at the very end of the year. This is an action other item with an action requested concerning Teresa D. Johnson CPA Incorporated, which is our outside CPA firm that does some consulting work and answers and consults on technical questions that we may not have the expertise on in-house. So sorry, I've already lost my voice, so just wait for the next presentation. I'll be very quiet. The next steps on this presentation are, in essence, it's a service contract. It's an operational personal services contract. And it was amended in 2024. It was started in 2023. And then the 2024 second amendment was to add dollars to it. So it went from basically 25,000 up to a maximum of $49,999. Something to keep in mind is we have put out an RFP to get a formal process to vet could be this firm again, but it may be somebody else in the coming year. And that may take place as soon as December. So this is literally to stop the gap of the last year's contract hitting its maximum and us needing to pay bills for 2 months. So the technical accounting services that they offer would be a financial statement preparation, help with the auditors, GAAP compliance, which is very specific knowledge, BARS and GASB compliance, and then when we changed the scope the last time, they've only gone payroll taxes and reporting as well. And the increased amount, this is kind of the litany where you see specifically what the contract went through, where it was and where it stands with the request for $30,000, which would be the stopgap, which does not mean we will necessarily spend $30,000. It's just a conservative number to make sure that we don't need any others. We will probably come in well under that. So the next steps would be, if approved, the board would amend the contract, not to exceed limit. Whoops, I zipped by it. There we go. And then there would be the proposed motion. So that's my position and request. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments from the commission? Any public, anybody would like to give public comment on the motion?
No raised hands on Zoom.
All right, if there's no public comment, no further discussion from the commission, is there, do we have a motion?
Right in front of you.
Oh, that doesn't do me any good.
Oh,
Let them know.
We just have to make a motion.
I can't make the motion. Sorry.
I move to authorize the executive director to sign a contract amendment with Teresa D. Johnson CPA to continue providing technical accounting services, adding $30,000 to the contract for a total not to exceed amount of $79,900.
We have a motion. Is there a second? I will second the motion. So we have a motion and a second to authorize the executive director to sign a contract amendment with Teresa D. Johnson CPA to continue providing technical accounting services, adding $30,000 to the contract for a total not to exceed amount of $79,999. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I would just remind all of ourselves that we've had a lot of turnover in our finance department, turnover in our leadership department. We do not seek to bring items as action other, and it is necessary as we continue to find the areas that have been neglected in the past. So thank you, and hopefully we won't have to do that in the future, but good job getting it done.
Thanks.
And I will say this does appear to be just due to the open position of payroll coordinator. So once we get that filled, we shouldn't need to do this again next year. We should have this in-house.
All right, hearing no other discussion, no further discussion, I will call for the vote. We have a motion to authorize the executive director to sign a contract amendment with Teresa D. Johnson CPA to continue providing technical accounting services, adding $30,000 to the contract for a total not to exceed amount of $79,999. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Dad. Moving on to the third item of the action other calendar is the 2024 capital budget amendment, Marine Terminal Warehouse. Afshin Yilmaz, Marine Terminal Senior Manager. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Afshin Yilmaz, Marine Terminal Senior Manager, and I'm here for the 2024 capital budget amendment for the Marine Terminal Warehouse. So today is an action item, and we request approval. And this is to approve an amendment to the 2024 capital budget to initiate design of and procure infrastructure for a new 70,000 square foot marine terminal warehouse that we have been discussing. We did an advisory presentation on it a while back on August 12th. I wasn't here at the time. Our original warehouse, I don't want to go through these. I think we have looked at these in detail, but we have the 76,000 square foot warehouse right now that was constructed in '83. It's very strategically located, and that's another reason we want another warehouse right next to it to capture cargo that wants warehouse right on the dock. And in the weather conditions that we face here in Pacific Northwest, just as an example with the paper cargo, it allows them to move the cargo very quickly into the warehouse. And nowadays the shipping costs are too high, vessels staying in the port longer. They obviously do more emissions and as well as they cost a lot more money. And having a warehouse right on the dock is a luxury that we have right now, and we want to expand on it as we have seen the success. The warehouse's activities that we got from this warehouse and related cargo has contributed really handsomely to the terminal finances. The cargo that necessitated for us to expand has already contributed about close to 1/3 to half of the price of that warehouse. So that's net revenue. This is a high volume cargo. And this is one of the type of jobs that we want to go after, not just a project cargo that comes and disappears from the port, but that we constantly on demand provide to the customers. And again, you can see on the results that this is mostly connected to as much as the other cost cuttings that we went through in the last 2 years, just to bring the marine terminal finances to more healthy levels, but mostly because of the new business line that we have. The demand will soon exceed the capacity. And at the moment, actually, every time new ship comes, we are having some stressful moments. Sometimes the ship is ahead of the schedule and we still have a lot of material in the warehouse. Like, for example, the next ship is coming with 22,000, over 22,000 tons of cargo. And we still have quite a bit of cargo in the warehouse. And when they come, we might be running out of capacity and we're constantly having to work around that. This was based on a trial with the customer and they want to expand more in the region because it's just much easier to come here through the maritime route than railing things from south. And they would like to keep expanding and delivering to their customers on a very timely and efficient manner. And we would like to continue doing it for them. And also this warehouse, I would like to also point out something. We're not asking this warehouse for this client only. If this client wasn't here, I would still push for a warehouse investment because the marine terminal is there. Regardless of what you want to do with it in the future, it has a running cost, it has assets, it needs to be taken care of. It's a federal asset. And to do that, especially without touching taxpayer money, as recently we've been able to, we need to improve. We need to be more aggressive and we need to invest. And right now also I see no other significant revenue generating opportunities with the port. And marine terminal is trying to at least help on that front. And we believe it will continue to do so.
Can I ask some follow-ups?
Please.
Because of things I heard today, I just want to make sure we're really clear. So Afshin, are we incurring any debt to build this warehouse?
Negative.
Are we using cash on hand?
Cash on hand, and
you mentioned taxpayer resources. Is it your belief that this investment will be made without drawing any public subsidy?
Absolutely. From the cash on hand, and to be honest, half of it is already paid for and half of it will come from operations. So at the end of the day, within the time way before we depreciate this asset, it's going to be paid by entirely net revenues from the marine terminal operations.
Thank you.
Did you want to follow up on that question or do you have?
It seemed like despite that there were still some people who thought it was different. So I just wanted to make sure.
This is not the most accurate drawing, but that's where that warehouse is going to fall and it's going to be longer due to the space. As you can see in the middle, we're going to keep the rail lines, the rail tracks available to be able to use with the both warehouses. And this still falls into the what you would call the west of Washington Street, the west of that road. And that also opens up the opportunity that in the future, if the log yard needed to be used for another cargo or for some other purposes, that warehouse is not on the way. And that's an
We heard that it was a half mile long. Can you tell us what 70,000 square feet?
It's gonna, I don't have the exact length with me right now because we still haven't decided on the exact width, but that's gonna come all the way to the crane over there, just a little bit more south. Again, we don't have the full design of the building yet, but that yellow line on the south is gonna extend towards the crane, and that's where we would intend to put the loading ramps too.
The square root of 70,000 is about 265 feet, so we don't know its exact proportions, but if it's not square, but it sounds like it's about 265 feet by 265 feet.
I think so. Again, right now, I don't have the exact measurements in my mind, but I know that when we drew it, it went all the way down to where we store the crane right now. So we're gonna have to remove all that old equipment from there and store them elsewhere. And that's a pretty dead area too, Commissioner. That's an area that's nothing happens there. We don't store cargo. Very rarely we will, like just right now, we're storing engines in that area. So it's gonna finally be utilized for revenues. This is a very simplistic warehouse payback projection. This is based on a few scenarios. We flirted with the worst case too, but the warehouse would be paid. I can't see the exact point where the dash meets the red, but before 2028 with the activities. We assume that the customer will continue with us, but there's, I want to address everybody's concerns about it. This risk exists everywhere. Everywhere customers come and go. And again, we do not want to just, I want to thank some of the comments about diversification. We always need to diversify, and this is a way. It just has been successful. We want to continue. We might not have this cargo in the future. Well, maybe we will go for their competitors. Somebody is going to supply somewhere. And a lot of the considerations that was mentioned, it's out of our hands. We're a small port. We believe with all the financial that has been presented to you, it's just financially responsible for the port to pay attention to revenue generating opportunities too, because we don't see a lot of them around. So this is for initial design and to procure infrastructure or to get into contract for 1 million in addition to the current 2024 capital budget. It's unrestricted excess cash reserves. We are projecting an additional $3 million in 2025 to finish the project. Break-even period is 3 to 5 years, up to 6 years. Use, again, this is very important, is not limited to a single customer. We believe in many aspects, this is very compatible with the Port Peninsula Integrated Master Plan. In fact, if you asked a lot of people right now, and there are a lot of people who are a lot more experienced than me in the industry here, if you collected a poll and said, like, what could Port of Olympia do to at least make itself a little bit different from the other ports to attract cargo? This is it. Warehouses, there's not much else we can do. We're not going to compete with bulk ports. We're not going to do major containers, cars, etc. This is the thing that we can go for. And it happens to me already working. And at the moment, it is really fitting with the master plan in the most optimal way, because we cannot just say, again, like somebody said, let's hibernate the port and lose money. That will be losing taxpayer money.
I had asked, but I don't know if you ever put this together. Do you know what the carrying costs are that if we were to hibernate the port, how much we'd still be paying every year?
$450,000 a month is the running cost of this port. So we have to make that money somewhere, and we are making it. $450,000. This is including depreciation, overheads, and I'm talking about average. Of course, this varies with the expenditures, but if you just ask me a napkin economics, I would tell you $450,000 you have to make every month to have this port. And this is the cargo. And together with the logs and other little projects we do, this is what pays for the bill. And then on top of that provides cash flow to the port. for the port to do other things, basically. But we need to invest in the marine terminal, otherwise, it's like a car. It's just gonna cost more and more money, and we need to take care of this federal asset, and we're just trying for ways to make it happen. Go ahead.
Well, just one more question. I had a chance, I wasn't able to attend the town hall, but I did go to able to see it. Many of the concerns and the support were similar to what we've heard today. There's one piece that I have personally had responded to constituents that I was planning, I would request from you and Alex a written business justification. And it was something that I was had said we would be sharing. And there is this PowerPoint, and we did a town hall, but there's no like written business case. Can you address that? Why we didn't prepare a written business case?
Business case is there. I mean, can you go further on the business case? The business case is the current customer already bringing cargo here. And also we have I want to address that, which is the actual business case. We have 80,000 tons coming our way that is actually committed. So everybody was talking about the signed document. So this is the document we are working on going back and forth, because we are not I'm not worried about that 80,000 ton coming here. It is coming here. What we are trying to do is at the same time help our local 47 to at least there's a chance, it's not 100%, but use that document to apply to certain places to increase their numbers, because they have members retiring. And to be honest, when we are operating, sometimes due to the lack of numbers, especially when we have two ships alongside, we have to get travelers from other ports.
I think what I think option you're telling me you've already done proof of concept through the actual work you've done and what you've demonstrated.
Correct.
I do see that, and I've asked you so many questions, and you've brought me information that has helped me piece together a story. I think all I'm saying is that in the future, what I'm hearing from the public is a desire that they don't spend all the time we spend as commissioners working with staff to kind of be able to pick apart and answer questions. And I think it's appropriate. That's why we're elected as commissioners, to do that work. But for many, I think having a written business case in advance of a PowerPoint presentation can be important in specific instances. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Director Alex Smith had promised that would happen, and it didn't happen in the end. Alex, do you want to address that? Yeah, if I may. I had hoped we could and had been talking with Option about it, but as you get into providing what you'd expect to see in a business case, we were going to be revealing information that was very competitive in nature, and I think that we were uncomfortable in sharing because of the highly competitive nature of this kind of cargo and the other ports. And so mea culpa, it was me, I thought we could, and I said that we could, and then ultimately we couldn't do it without revealing information that was essentially confidential business information. So I very much heard what people had to say about that, and hope to on things where we don't have this level of sensitivity around it to do business cases for future projects. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you very much. As the executive director said, that's one of the main reasons. We do have certain results and projections that we can show, but we're also a business, and there's a lot of competition for this, and we don't want to reveal every nut and bolt of our business.
Can I ask a question, Chair? Okay. So you mentioned in passing the travelers, and I just want to expand on that for those who are unfamiliar. I think when we're looking at these topics like marine shipping, which most of us don't have expertise in, it's helpful to think of it something in our own life, our car, our house. If we're not investing in it, it's breaking down more. So can you expand on what this investment will do for preserving those jobs and replacing those people who are retiring? Because you touched on it, but I want you to explain it to the audience.
Actually, Rob Rose would have more information on that, but for us to increase our numbers in our local, especially to replace folks that are retiring, And I believe PMA, they want to see certain numbers. They want to see business coming to the ports. And usually, again, as you can see, it's hard to achieve, hard to get that commitment from customers because just marine industry doesn't work like that. It's not like, okay, we're going to come to you for 30 years. That just doesn't happen. Even in the container business, they constantly flip-flop, go elsewhere.
So pausing just to translate for those of us who don't live in this world. So PMA designates which longshoremen are going to be stationed in Olympia.
Basically, they not which longshoremen, I believe they have a effect on increasing their numbers if they wanted to increase and recruit more people. Correct. And for that to happen, they've been waiting for that for a long time. Our log business by itself was not enough, but this have a chance of providing that, and that they would be able to get more members from Thurston County from here into their members. And these are good jobs. And this is not just for Susanna, this is not just for any other, this is for our working members. I would like to mention that I worked with other parts too, other parts of the world and other ports. We have the best. I mean it. I'm not just saying it just to, bring up emotions here. And they have been key in our last business too. And there's a chance now to increase their numbers using this. And that's why I urge, us to continue with this business. So this becomes a bridge for them to be able to do that.
So for those who don't live in this world, essentially there are forces beyond the Port of Olympia who are going to be looking at this commission and whether or not we're going to support this investment in the marine terminal to make determinations about these jobs, both now and in the future.
Absolutely.
And so this is a critical crossroads essentially of whether we are going to continue to invest in supporting the marine terminal.
I see it that way, definitely.
Okay. And those are additional, we already heard about the impact that the existing jobs make in our community, but those would be jobs that would potentially go away. If we weren't
Potentially go away. That's the worst part. I mean, it creates a lot of good jobs and consistency. So it's not just one ship comes and goes away. These are warehouse activities. We have longshore working in the warehouse every day, and those are direct return to Thurston County.
And if we don't fix our car or our house, then it might stop working altogether.
It will stop working altogether.
Got it. Thank you.
Eventually, because this is not like a piecemeal thing. Really, nobody wants to depart Olympia and go. I mean, obviously, if something else becomes much more attractive, but right now we are doing a good job. And the only problem is the capacity. And if we do not have the capacity, unfortunately, the finances of doing business on the West Coast in the shipping industry eliminates the luxury of going to two ports, dropping two. They do that on the East Coast, but that's major cargo. For the cargo that's coming here, they cannot afford to do that. So they can go and do it somewhere else where there's more capacity. And we would have lost it just for that. And that's, I find that financially irresponsible, to be honest.
Thank you.
And there's a suggested motion.
Move to amend the 2024 capital budget and add 1 million for a marine terminal warehouse.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've had quite a bit of discussion. Is there any further discussion from the commission?
More questions, but you go.
Okay. Mostly just comments, no questions. Did you want to ask your question?
I just wanted to, as far as the integration with the master planning process, we have an existing tenant on the marine terminal and warehouser who has some existing extensions to their lease at their sole discretion. And the projections that you have as far as when this warehouse would pay for itself are essentially shorter than the amount of time that warehouser is most likely going to be here without any optionality. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think it's going to be shorter than that, but let's be conservative. It's going to be about the same time it's going to be paid for.
So for those who are those in the community wanting to have a broader conversation about reimagining the marine terminal, there really is no conversation until after those extension options have expired. And this is not in contradiction of continuing to have that conversation.
Correct. That's one of the key points, Commissioner, for us to think that this is not a major impediment to the master planning. We wouldn't want to undermine master planning, which is more important. But this is going to help with those activities.
And then hindsight's 2020, and there was probably good reasons at the time, but there's been comments made of how is this different than the crane? Can you just speak to that as far as your business plan?
Absolutely. So the crane can only attract certain cargo, and a lot of places have cranes. So a lot of ships, as you can see, have cranes. So at the time, I cannot speak because there were different. This is a while back. There were different opportunities out there, different economic activity. But right now, a lot of ships have their own cranes, and the very heavy lift cargo at the moment, it doesn't find its way too much to Olympia because we have issues, let's say wind blades. We have issues taking it out of Olympia. So most of those big projects go to other ports. We do get to use our crane, and we are still chasing certain opportunities to at least make the crane pay for itself. Again, this is a very different thing. You can buy a crane. Again, sometimes it costs the same money. That's the beauty about this warehouse. It's not that expensive. Right now, if you wanted to build something more permanent, it's going to run over $8 million. And you can see with some other ports who are making those investments, there are massive investments happening in other ports, some in Bellingham that you've seen yourself. And they don't even, some of them don't even have a business supporting that. The whole world is speculating basically, but that's just the nature of the marine trade.
So in your mind, comparing the crane with the warehouse is apples and oranges and essentially not.
Fuji apples and oranges.
Thank you.
Mr. Tom?
Yeah, I just want to go back to your original slide, Ashton. We have been talking about this since August 12th. This isn't new. We were advised on this in a fairly full business case back there in August. And since then, we've only been given more information and been able to ask more questions. And over this whole period, it just seems like more and more of a logical decision. I do hear that maybe it's not the most environmentally friendly product, but compared to many things, it is. And this is seems like a gift to the Port of Olympia. So thank you, Ashwin, for your hard work on this.
Any other comments or questions?
Comment, we're on the vote, right? Yeah. There's public comment too, don't forget. Commenting again. Well, okay. It's interesting. I definitely, there was no elected office I would have sought other than being a port commissioner. And here we are, port commissioners, and the port is a very unique animal because it's a public entity, it's a local government, but it runs business lines. And when it's running business lines, it's seeking to make a profit instead of depending on taxpayers for subsidy for those business lines. When I ran for office, I heard from many of the same concerned citizens who are concerned about the warehouse that they didn't want to see us publicly subsidizing the marine terminal. They wanted it to either be self-supporting or transition to something else. And I think what you bring us here with this marine terminal warehouse opportunity is an opportunity for the marine terminal to be self-supporting, to support these family wage jobs. I think it's consistent with the master planning, but I think that I realize we are still engaging with the public to try to help make sure that when we use terms like these, we all have the same expectations around the terms. Because as I hear members of the public testify, they say, well, why are we doing this when the master planning is about to start? Well, master planning gives us a roadmap for our investment opportunities and maybe some transitions in our business lines over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But during the time scale that we're talking about for this investment, we are still looking to to generate revenues, to support the living wage jobs, and in fact, to honor the union contract that we just signed, and to be able to pay for it and pay for these jobs. So I'm really glad that you are building sort of a business strategy that helps us do that without taxpayer subsidy. I will hold you accountable to the projections and your expectations that you brought us. That's my role as a port commissioner. And the members of the public here are going to hold us accountable to our decisions to validate these investments.
And that's what the process is. And it's a really weird thing in this public-private sector. So I also want to say thank you. And I just wanted to say those things as well.
Would you like me to make comment now or after public comment? Okay.
Whatever you like.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I think this was a good process. As Commissioner Tong pointed out, it started quite some time ago. We're not talking about doing a master plan. We are doing a master plan. It's happening side by side with this. And I wanted to address some of the comments around transparency. There's been robust and extended opportunities for public comment. The town hall was scheduled in response to the public requests, as well as advocacy from my fellow commissioners. And I think given these robust efforts to respond and include the public in this process, it seems that the cries stating a lack of transparency are disingenuous to me. And rather than they're an attempt to dictate a particular outcome and silence the voices of disagreement. So I strongly disagree with the cries about lack of transparency. I think this was a process we can be proud of as a commission, and it is a good example for future decisions. As far as the revenue generation element that Option talked about, that is something that Commissioner Ayala and I have been saying since the beginning of our terms here is, if we want to do good, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. And I'm excited about our efforts to lead environmental remediation for legacy pollution and Budd Inlet. I'm excited about small cities grants and all of the things we do in our community. And to complete these projects, we need to be able to pay for them. So when we're looking at our capital plan, when we're looking at our future, we need to look at opportunities for revenue generation. And for those of you who haven't had the privilege of working with Option, he's nimble, he's creative. He's intellectually honest. So I think Joel Hansen said, trust your team. We trust you, Option. We're excited. And thank you for bringing this to us. And from my commercial real estate lens, I think it does give me comfort that shipping markets are not something I know a lot about. They seem very volatile. There's potential tariffs coming down the pipeline. There's competition with other ports, but the flexibility of a clear span warehouse, as Michael Cade stated, market demand is strong. It could be used for other industrial uses, recreation. So I'm excited about it and excited to vote yes, because I like to get to yes. As my fellow commissioners know.
All right. Well, I would just like to say that this proposed warehouse expansion, offers substantial revenue potential. It's going to enhance workforce opportunities for our ILWU members. It's actually going to provide us with a better competitive edge in this evolving market. We talked about risks, and at the town hall, someone mentioned the tariffs, potential of increasing tariffs, which we know can impact import goods. But I believe this warehouse will help us mitigate that, help our customers mitigate that by offering a service where the handling and shipping, and it's going to help them, and it's going to help us become a shipping hub for those customers. The other thing is the marine terminal's financial status has improved over the last 3 years. It's not losing millions of dollars a year, and that just further strengthens the case for me for investing in this additional warehouse capacity. With this stable foundation, we're in a great position to fund this expansion through unrestricted cash reserves. We're not going to finance this. We're not going to use tax dollars. We're going to build this with the money the port has, which serves to mitigate the financial risk that we would otherwise be facing. And so I really believe that it's important for us to capitalize on this strong financial standing, and the port will be able to make strategic moves and support our current operational demands, and also include our long-term growth. And just one final thing, if it were my money, I absolutely would invest in this. So let's see if there's any public comment.
I have one person on Zoom who has a raised hand.
Okay, Janine.
This is Janine.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, as unpopular as it's going to be to say this, since you've all decided what you're going to do, I'm going to say it anyway. And that's that there's a number of concerns here. One is that information would be too sensitive to share with the public. That's a big concern. Alex Smith told us that one, we were going to be able to have conversations about the marine terminal being a viable entity or not. And now we're saying, gosh, that's not really a conversation anymore. Two, we can't put a business plan into a public meeting because it's too sensitive. How do we know that that's not being put into it? Because really the numbers don't really pan out. If you don't think that 10 years ago, we were at port meetings in which we listened impassioned, while they impassionately told us that cranes and fuel docks and real estate properties in Lacey, that any number of things were going to be incredible money makers for the Port of Olympia. And then none of these things pencil out, with maybe the exception of the Lacey real estate properties, which finally, after $1 million of immediate repair that needed to go into the roof there, that the commissioners were never told about. But, you know, we have a history here of doing this. And one of the downsides of what someone was trying to make an upside, which is that you don't want to be held responsible as a commission to be responsible for the past errors of what happened at the Port of Olympia, but you have to be responsible now for this. And you don't have a contract for this cargo. If it's so wonderful, if it's so going to be such a moneymaker, why can't we get a contract for this? Why is it that we have to go on risk, as Mr. Yelma said, that there's always risk and we are making assumptions, he said. Why are we doing that? Why would you not, as good business people, want a contract for this? Why do we need to even take risk in this? If it's so beautiful, get a contract for it. Show us the contract, show us the numbers, you know, show us the business plan. This is, I'm going to really agree with Bob here that I just feel like there's many very strong concerns here. And I'm disappointed with this commission not asking the kinds of questions that I think you should be asking to make a decision like this in this short period of time. You don't have to make this decision. You don't have to vote yes today. You could do this next month or the month after. You could get a lot more information about this, but you're not doing that. And that's something I think is wrong.
Thank you for your comments. Any other, Ms. Patton, you'd like to make comment?
So I've observed over these very many years of attending port meetings and following port business closely that there are a number of citizens or a minority of citizens who are citizens against virtually everything that the port ever tries to do. I call them cave people, citizens against virtually everything. And I don't think that they necessarily care about economic development, economic opportunities, or building community. And back to the point of negotiating these kind of business decisions, it goes back to the same idea of when you go into executive session to discuss real estate transactions, you can't show your cards because then other entities will get an upper hand and they can underbid you or out negotiate you. So, I mean, that's common in business. Anyone that knows anything about business or real estate knows this. So, in addition to the attraction of new cargo to the port, addition to the job opportunities, which I meant, what I mentioned at the town hall last Thursday was that this warehouse can serve other purposes like it did during COVID when they built tiny houses for unhoused populations. And then think if we had another catastrophic earthquake like we did in 2001 and I-5 goes down, we would have an extra resource right here on the port, right at the water's edge, what, 175 feet from the water's edge? So the Coast Guard could come in, FEMA could come in, we could have triage, we could have places to store food and water and all these things we need that cannot get here by I-5 or even by rail. So this would be a huge asset to this community in case of an emergency, which could happen at any time. So I just encourage you to go ahead with this warehouse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Patton. Is there any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say, not a lot is talked about the.
Could you state your name?
Oh, Matt Bell, I'm probably the largest employer of longshoremen here. Yeah, for sure. I don't think I can explain how much money is brought in just in wages and their benefits. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for good paying jobs for a lot of people. I really want to stress that these are not bottom barrel jobs. These are really good jobs. And this is just increasing that. And it will. I work everywhere. I am the major employer. I'm telling you, there will be business for it. If it is not Suzano, it will be somebody else. And Suzano's not going anywhere. And if they do go anywhere, it's going to come from the south. And it is the most environmentally friendly way to bring things here is by boat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any other public comment?
Call for the vote.
All right, we have a call for the vote. Can we have the motion back on the screen, please? All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the 2024 capital budget. We had $1 million for marine terminal warehouse. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for all of that hard work to get that done. That was okay. So we'll move on to the advisory calendar. First up is professional services contract amendments. James Summer, Capital Assets Program Manager. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is James Summer. I'm your Capital Assets Program Manager. I'm here tonight to present to you about two of our professional service contracts and some amendments that we are proposing. For today's presentation, advisory only, no action is required. The two contracts we'll be talking about is Moffitt Nickel Professional Services Contract 2022-1017 and Skillings Professional Services Contract 2022-1020. And then the next steps in this process. So a little bit about how these contracts came to be. In 2022, the port sought to bolster its on-call professional services pool. As such, a competitive solicitation process was started. We released a request for solicitations in February of 2022. We got statements of qualifications that were due back in March of 2022. And the initial contracts were signed in April of 2022. And so, as I mentioned, it was a request for qualifications, and it was a multi-category request for qualifications. They could submit under community, economic, land use, and environmental planning, engineering, surveying, architecture, landscape architecture, project and/or construction management, archaeological and cultural resources, and arboricultural services. And so Moffitt Nickel was one of the firms that submitted. They submitted under two different categories, the first being the community, economic, land use, and environmental planning, and the second was for engineering. I've put some of the subsets of what fall into those categories, but the entire statement of qualifications has been provided in your packet tonight. So this is, again, agreement number 2022-1017. This is the third amendment for this contract. The first two amendments were for time extensions only. So the initial contract started in April 1st, 2022. It is currently planned to continue through to December 31st, 2026. It has a current not to exceed amount of $99,999. We are proposing an addition of $200,001 for a new total not to exceed amount of $300,000. Just as a reminder to the commission and any public listening, this is not a guarantee of work. This is a on-call agreement. So should we need to utilize the services of this firm, we give them the scope of work. They come back, give us a proposal, say this is what we think it'll cost, and then we issue them a not to exceed task order amount. So although the contract authority would be $300,000 for this contract, it is not a guarantee of work. The second contract tonight is Skillings, again, that came out of that request for qualifications. The three categories they submitted on was engineering, surveying, and project management. And similar to Moffitt Nickel, the full scope of qualifications has been provided in your packet tonight. It is agreement number 2022-10-2022. This is the third amendment for this contract. The first amendment came to the commission to add contract authority, and the second was a time extension. The initial contract commenced April 20th, 2022. It is planned to go through December 31st, 2026. The current not to exceed for this contract is at $300,000. We are proposing an addition of $200,000, bringing the total not to exceed to $500,000. Again, this is similar to the other contract. It is on call. This is not a guarantee of spend. And to date, I should have mentioned this on the first one, but for the Moffitt Nickel contract, we have two task orders contract for a total contract authority of $49,260. And for the Skillings contract, we currently have 14 task orders that have been authorized for a total contract authority of $258,215. So next steps, future commission will be requested in November. I believe it is at the November 25th meeting. And there we will be requesting the commission to authorize the executive director to execute the professional service agreement amendments as presented tonight. And so with that, I would open it up to questions and comments.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Tong, Commissioner Sanders, Commissioner Vasavina, Commissioner Harding. Sounds like you explained it perfectly.
You're the room.
Look at it's a little lonely up here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, oh, was there a public comment on that? No?
Oh, wait, yeah, there is. Sorry.
Is there a hand?
Not on Zoom.
No. All right, then I guess there's no public comment on the professional services contract amendments. All right, next up, we are going to go into a public hearing. The public hearing is on draft 2025 proposed operating budget, capital investment plan, and tax levy, as presented by Tad Koff, Director of Finance. So let me read this part here. Pursuant to RCW 53.35.020, the Port of Olympia has prepared the port's 2025 draft budget. The draft budget was presented in public meetings on October 4th, 21st, and 28th in 2024, and shall be considered during tonight's public hearing on November 18th as needed. And no, wait a minute. And shall be considered during tonight's public hearing on November 18th as needed, and at the regular public meeting on November 25th, 2024. The commission will meet on November 25th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. to adopt the port's final 2025 budget of the Port of Olympia for the 2025 calendar year. The draft budget is on file at the Port of Olympia offices at Percival Plaza, 606 Columbia Street Northwest, Suite 300, Olympia, Washington, and any member of the public may obtain a copy of the preliminary budget at this address during normal business hours. A summary of the budget is also available on the port's website, www.portolympia.com. So this item is located on the agenda. It's item number J2A. J2A, okay. So this is a public hearing on the proposed 2025 budget. Today is November 12th, 2024, and I now open this public hearing for the Port of Olympia 2025 budget. All right, so Washington State Law, RCW 53.35.030 requires that public hearing be held before the Port of Olympia Commission authorizes the 2025 budget. The public hearing is held in order to provide the public with an opportunity to comment, and the purpose of this hearing is to take comments, if any, from the public on the proposed 2025 budget. As a reminder, public comments are limited to 3 minutes. So form a line and let's we can take anybody who has public comment, we can take those comments right now. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to make public comment?
See no raised hands on Zoom.
Well,
Tad has a presentation and I think he will highlight the changes in this version of the budget from the last one that you saw, commissioners. And is it something, I think it's something Tad can zip through pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yes, we will do that. Hello, Commissioners. Tad Kopp, Director of Finance. The room is cleared. Let's have at it. Budget time. Draft budget 2025 proposed operating budget, capital investment plan, and tax levy third review. This is a non-action advisory only item tonight. Remaining, we're going to go through the schedule. I've flipped the remaining schedule with the IOUs and the 2025 budget assumptions, but this runs basically the same itinerary we've run in the last 2 meetings. The remaining budget timeline, we are tonight, November 12th, as stated. We have a potential November 18th meeting, final adjustments if needed. I would assume that will be determined tonight at the end if that's necessary. And then with the final November 25th, 2024 will be the 2025 budget tax levy resolution adoptions and the budget resolution adoption. I will have, because this is one thing that did change on the IOUs about airport fencing and our ongoing desire to create clarity and also really isolate the airport finances for moving forward. Tricia Miller, our controller, has made a change to this proposal, so I'll let her speak on that.
Tricia Miller, Controller for the Port of Olympia. At our last meeting on October 28th, I talked to the commission about how we would allocate our overhead costs to the airport and the rest of the port. And I had proposed adopting the modified total direct cost method. But with further research, I've found that while we do not have to adopt any certain allocation method. We do have to adhere to certain FAA rules and regulations. So when I worked the numbers out, by changing to an expense method, it became unequitable to the different business lines. And the method that we need to adopt, it needs to be, we need to be able to support it and defend it. So right now we're going to use the revenue method, percent of total revenue, and it's a conversation that needs to be discussed among staff and the commission as to what we want to use going forward. And what we apply to the budget is not stationary. The state auditor's office talks about best practices, and they say that you need to you have to adjust as your business progresses. So it's going to be a conversation that we have to have, a more of a management conversation. It leads into an accounting discussion, but it's both. It's management and accounting. So we need to find the best method for the port, so that we can allocate the overhead cost equitable to all the business lines.
So you're saying we can use revenue for the budget, and then if at our retreat in January, we want to change to something else, we can at any time make a change based on management.
Yeah, and we have to be able to support what we're doing. So when I was doing the research, the state auditor's offices has much on their website, and they go down into, you could allocate it based on FTEs or number of invoices per department. So what's been used for the port in the past has been the percent of revenue method. That may not be what is the best method for our business. So it's something that requires more thought and more steps to look into it. Yes.
So if you were to go to slide 23 now in the budget presentation, where it says G&A allocation to operations, does that slide that's currently in the presentation use the former revenue percent allocation method?
It does. And that is supported by Appendix G. It's the very last page of the budget book. It'll show the
and is this what it looked like originally then in the first look of the budget? Was it the same percentages or has that changed?
No, it's different percentages. The percentages that I used first were the prior year's percentages, prior year budget percentages. I actually did the calculations with current revenue by department. And so that's where these new percentages come through. So that's why it changed from then to now. Yeah. And one of the slides that Tad will be looking at is we've taken my mind has gone blank. I apologize. The net revenue by department. So I am used to looking at the numbers, and at our last meeting, there's the commissioners said that we also need to look at it from a management perspective. So Tad is going to explain that little switch so you can see from a management standpoint and not just the accounting standpoint. So, and I just. So. Any other questions? I apologize.
We're doing good.
So let me get back to where we were, but I will explain how that change affects, and you're going to see that in those percentage allocations. And I'll talk about how we did it before, how this changes, and will inform our discussion going forward, because I know we're going to have retreats and look at this methodology in the future as well. So timeline done, airport fencing, that was the modification between our last presentation and this one, and the changes have been baked in, so to speak. So I believe that was Commissioner Vasavada's question, where are these changes in what we're looking at tonight? The answer to that is yes. So moving on, IOUs, I'll briefly go through these. These were the questions that came out of our last iteration. The increased basis for our business lines, we supplied that to the commissioners on 11-1. The difference between operating and maintenance expenses, there was a large write-up that Warren Hendrickson went through that we have also submitted to you separately to explain really kind of in depth what that difference is. Commission special projects, dollars location. The question was, where did that live on the budget? It's now included in the capital investment plan contingency budget. And then we had a question on public amenity dollars location as well, which is now included in the governmental services budget. And again, we're attempting to make that a little more clear as we go forward, moving away from the old commission budget and going to governmental services, because that always created confusion of what are these dollars, what are we paying for, that sort of thing. So we're molding this in a more clear fashion going forward. The remaining IOUs were a compensation of outside professional services in communications budget, there's 100 grand in there for the website improvements and 75,000 for photography, video services, and promotional of port activities as well. That's what those go to. G&A amount for finance and accounting had a positive number on page 24 of the second draft budget. That's a bit of an in-depth accounting question, but the reason for it in short is that positive number, although they all look negative around it, is to transfer those funds over and allocate that. So it looks the other way because it functions to move the costs. And then in addition to the capital costs, the new proposed capital projects also included the project associated increased revenues. The third draft in this slide deck now includes the projected revenue increases. So that was a question of, have we put the associated revenue increases for the capital projects that we're speaking of, including the terminal and the boat work specifically, did we put the upside in along with the cost? And now we have. So before it wasn't, and that's the change. And so I do have a little synopsis on that, but let's keep going. The 2025 budget assumptions have been updated with the new figures. So operating revenues a projected increase of 13.1%. Operating and maintenance and admin expenses increase of 7.7. Grants are going up largely, and you'll see that in association with the capital budget because there's so much going on. There's a huge influx of grants associated with that as well. Rates and fees we've gone through with that increase. Staffing, COLA salaries increase we went through, and the 3 additional FTE detail we've gone through. So, yes, sir.
Just operating revenues. So you said you've updated this sheet. Operating revenues increased 13.1%. Can you explain kind of how that came about? That's a pretty hefty increase.
As the projections come through, you're going to see it individually broken down by the operating units. So that's where that detail is going to lie. So I don't have a good answer off the top, but we'll see that as we go. Salary adjustments, we went through this in the last, there's no changes to this slide. Capital budget, there is an addendum, there's an add to this, and it is in the purple section on real estate, was not on there before, and this is for Rance and Anthony's parking lot. It's $500,000 exactly, plus $250,000 from outside, not port funds. So this is an increase of $500,000 for that project.
I'm sorry, you're saying that wasn't there you've added
$750,000 total, $500,000 port supported.
Can someone say what the change was from last time?
Line number 18.
Yeah, that was not in before. It was,
So a whole new project is a yes.
Are the other funds grant funds for that project?
The $250,000, I believe, are grant funds.
No.
Tenant funds. I am sorry.
Nice.
I stand corrected.
The service project?
Yes.
Which Anthony's is this?
Right down, right at the end of, towards the end of the port.
It's where the
Right next door.
Anthony's home port are.
So not where the,
Not down at the fire, not down at the very end, but it's literally right.
you know, where the Lost Dock is? It's not the Anthony's next to the Lost Dock. You understand my question?
Anthony's right next to Lost.
Sorry, I don't have a map up, but yes. Okay. The cash statutory budget has been adjusted with those other revenue amounts that I had said before. And at this point, because they're going to cascade through, I'm going to read through what those adjustments do. Specifically, you're going to see them reappear as they're going to adjust a number of figures. So specifically the marine terminal, the anticipated budget, the anticipated portable building completion will increase revenues by $250,000 and also increase associated expenses by $50,000. We, on the finance side, had a typing error in depreciation, and we understated depreciation by $220,000. So taken all together, it was roughly a $20,000 decrease between all those actions on the budget. And that second item was us and keying and rushing getting the preparation out. On the Swantown Boat Works, the anticipated boat yard expansion completion would increase revenues, specifically in Swantown Boat Works, by $100,000, both for 2025.
This was the.
And those numbers then are going to filter in here where you see operating revenues have been adjusted as well. So as you look through this, those adjustments have been added. So we start out with our beginning cash investments at just under 28 million, and we end at just under 20 million. And that large amount, that basically $8 million, is pretty much all of your capital spending. And you see that total amount that's in there. Cash available for operations slide that we developed. Largely, Trisha's worked on this and brought her expertise from the Port of Port Angeles. Not going to go through this specifically again, but it does show the complete picture, and it has been adjusted with those other revenue numbers in here as well. So you saw the 2024 story to the end. This is the 2025 budget beginning to end synopsis. Now, one thing that we have done just to help the ease of going through and thinking about this and our operating units is on the operating budget. We now have this slide specifically making it easier to understand how are our operations doing by themselves. This is independent of depreciation and general administrative expenses. So if you were to look at it from a financial point of view and you were taking overhead out and you were not looking at depreciation, this is how they end up landing, and they end up landing truly and squarely well in the black. You take the bottom line of that number and you end up with the top line of this slide, where we start seeing depreciation and G&A taken out. And this is where the comment says that the various items are not necessarily are not making money, but again, depreciation is the allocation and the recognition of costs already spent and spread across the time frame. Yes.
This looks worse to me than I remember seeing before. So can you explain? I mean, I think I'm seeing more loss across the board, except the properties are looking better. So this slide looks really different than what I remember. Are you able to show us what it was before and why it's changed like this?
These two slides, that one and this one, were specifically to show you basically different views of the same information. Now we have added that other revenue in as well.
In the last time we looked at the budget with you, what did this slide look like?
We didn't have this exact
You
slide.
had the combination of the two.
The next slide is going to be the one that you saw before. Those were as a result of trying to explain and show the request of not seeing certain aspects built in. This is a more standard accounting view and the way it would be set up.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the view, but the actual number in the bottom line, the numbers are different, right, than they were last time we looked at this?
They are, and we went through specifically in the second review, there were changes that were in there as well. We went through the last iteration. So those changes are in here, and then also on top of that are the changed revenue numbers.
The revenue from Swantown and the marina.
And the marina, right, those two adjustments.
We'll get they're operating at a bigger loss than before.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So what Commissioner Basavada is trying to flesh out is why have we added revenue and we have a greater loss in some of these business lines, and properties now is in the black and it was in the red. We're trying to understand what changes. Commissioner Ayala provided the previous slide, so
I will give you one bit, and Trisha's already stepping up because she knows exactly what it is.
Because for me, this bottom line is saying kind of, are we breaking even in different areas?
Mm-hmm.
And it looks worse today than it did in the last presentation. It's just trying to understand why. And I'm not sure I want to pass a budget that it plans that level of operating loss, given the conversation we just had.
Not operating. it's a loss after.
After
After depreciation and DNA.
Right.
Which is why we did that other slide to specifically break out operating.
I get that, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's different.
It's not cash flow.
But
What we're trying to understand is why the numbers are different. And we understand that revenue was added, but that doesn't explain the differences. So Tricia, could you?
Sure.
Tricia Miller, the controller. So the difference is, the method of allocation changed from, I did it in expense-based last time and revenue-based this time. But also the changes that Tad talked about that we had, that the numerical changes from last presentation to this, the big one is $220,000 of depreciation, that it was a keying error on my part. I didn't include it in the marine terminal, and it belonged in the marine terminal. So I had understated depreciation in the last iteration. So while we had an increase of revenue of 250,000 at the marine terminal and an increase of revenue at the boatworks for 100,000, we also had a $50,000 increase in expenses associated with marine terminal revenue. So the difference is there, but the big difference on why the increase or the decrease in net income is because of that $220,000 mistake that I made. It was a numerical mistake, and Option is actually the one that found it. So it was very, very good that he found it and he pointed it out to us.
And so, and what the allocation between revenue and expenses, that's the allocation of the GNA.
Correct.
And so previously we were looking at the airport having a $432,000 loss. Now why is the airport number? Is that the GNA allocation that I'm like trying to?
Yes, the allocation, the overhead amount did not change. It's 4.1 million of the admin and executive costs. So those are our overhead costs. So the way it was allocated is what has changed. And so that's why it appears that the bottom lines per department have changed. And that's why it's so important that we get the right allocation method. And then there's one small difference that I wasn't able to get out a little bit earlier, is in meeting the FAA requirements and rules. There are certain things that cannot be allocated to an airport, and there are certain things that must be allocated. So direct costs must be allocated. So we determined that there's like $8,000 in our marketing budget that is strictly airport. So that has gone straight to airport. But there's $100,000 in the marketing department that cannot go to airport. It's more port-wide expense. And the FAA says that you cannot allocate a port-wide expense to the airport. So that's partly why the airport's allocation went down, is they're not getting any part of that. So does that help any?
How did properties suddenly come out ahead?
By changing to back to the revenue method, their revenue is higher and expenses lower, so therefore they get a little bit less of the expense. So it's how last meeting you were looking at properties and saying, well, it doesn't make sense that they would be negative. Right. That, just from a conceptual standpoint. And when I worked the numbers, that's what happened, is by using and we have to allocate port wide. So we have to look at total port when we're doing the accounting methods. So it's, I could work through and
And the change in depreciation on Swantown is reflecting.
In depreciation on Swantown?
It was okay. It was 535 and now it's 543.
I'd have to look at that, but we attempted to make it more of a management discussion for you to look at between this slide and the last two. And it looks like maybe we just made it less clear.
I guess I'm really confused because I thought last time the allocation for GNA was still the revenue percentage and you were just talking about this other method. And I had been thinking through my head how that other method would impact things. But it was the last time was the same GNA allocation method as this time.
Yes.
Different percentages, though. The percentages were the
based on real
odd 2024 budget numbers.
Thank you. I lost. Trisha, you got me.
So like on properties, it was 413. Now it's
And I will say also, in terms of depreciation, in addition to adding in the revenue from the new capital projects, we just thought it was more intellectually honest to also add in depreciation that would come with those new capital projects. So that changed the depreciation as well.
doing great.
I think it's the fact that we're on the third iteration and we've made so many changes that is making it confusing to track.
Power through.
Moving on. So the next few slides are basically what you've seen before. The 23 has not changed. 24 and 24 budget versus projected are the same. And what we have done is we have worked those changes that you saw on the comparative slide into these slides, and it's just a graphical version of basically that information, but you can see it versus 24 and then 23. So that is the total comparative total operating budget, which is cumulative everything. We have one for airport, marina, marine terminal, and that's our total with real estate rounds it out. And again, I'm going through because most of those numbers have not changed, but the last set did. Now, tying in what Trisha said and going through this, we've got our GNA costs. Now, we did have that one amount. Well, that was depreciation. That was GNA. So GNA is still basically the same amount, but what we've gone through then is the allocation. So looking at it in a pie chart, and I know certain commissioners do like a good graph. This will show you, remember how everything was basically 24%, 20%, 26%, and then environmental and real estate had a little bit of difference. This is where you're seeing this other methodology and how it spreads GNA out amongst the different operating units and then including environmental. So we're going to have more discussions in the future as far as, do we like this methodology? Is this methodology equitable or agreement? And I will only say this, every organization I have been with in the public sector has this exact same argument every time, every year, about, as what Trisha said, about allocating by FTE, allocating by revenue, because those methodologies are allowable. Anytime that you change the methodology, it does track and make it confusing to follow, but it also inevitably and invariably makes a winner and a loser between departments, and you will have somebody get really happy and you'll get somebody really upset. So, and specifically in this and talking, and I'll put in this, Chris, our airport manager, on the line, how we expressed this and went through this methodology behind the scenes is that this at least will modify and track how those business units are working better. It's a better allocation method as far as being fair. But again, that is a matter for debate, and we will, I'm sure, have further things.
I'd like to see it based on FTEs.
Well, I think just my 2 cents. I think that just making a change is a much bigger discussion than, I personally appreciate going back to the revenue, basing it on revenue, at least for now. I absolutely think it should be a discussion for our first retreat in 2025. And we can have those discussions, because I think there's arguments for all the different methods of allocating that. So
And I think as far as presenting information in those conversations, having this graph reflect FTEs, revenue, expenses, look at the differences, have the business lines talk about,
Sure.
like that to me is how the questions could funnel back to the commission in a organized manner. Like, here's the impact, here's what everyone has to say, what do you want to do? And I think that that's where, as we refine the budget process, getting more to that level of strategic questions for the commission.
Agreed. Carrying on in the interest of the late hour. Yes, that. Tax levy. I will say that at about 4:48, I received the final number from the assessor. I don't have the final number in this slide because I could not get it in that amount of time and change it. So what I have done, and I've not been modifying the slide through our presentations, but I have done a calculation outside, is that this number very roughly will go down by about $80,000. So the port incoming revenues from this tax levy calculation is roughly going to down by $80,000, but has no refund in that figure. Last year, the port received about $79,000 in a refund, which is by refund standards, very high. So it should not be expected that that amount will completely wash this and make it an even non-change, but I will have to recalculate the final accepted budget. So I just want to make that particularly clear, because usually at this point, that's spot on and it's not. And it's because we were late getting the number and we just got it in. So there will be a change.
and you'll send that to us when you get it.
Absolutely, as soon as we can.
And are you gonna send the coded budget as well, or have you already sent that?
We did.
Okay,
The budget books are available printed whenever you would like them. The draft is online. And as requested, it is the format that has both the financial view, which is more consolidated, and then the GL view, which gives you more detail with the GL broken out of where the dollars are.
and that's available on the website under the budget.
We can put it there as well, yes. On tax levy use, expect basically the same modification when I get the other numbers in there as well. However, this has also been modified per what is in the rest of the presentation tonight. So we'll have a bit more modification because the tax levy revenue change, the number will change a bit. And that brings us to the budget FTE overview, which has not changed.
As far as, because I think one of the things we're trying to do is track changes from the different, so what can we anticipate? The tax levy number, which is going to then go back and be reflected in some of those previous slides. Are there other changes that we should be anticipating following this meeting?
Well, it's not really operational. So remember, the tax levy gets used for primarily debt, environmental, and then it moves on to like commissioner, which will be governmental services basically. And then at that point, any remaining either surplus or extra need for cash rolls over and is either pulled from reserves or operations.
But the tax levy number that you just received today, you are going to change,
Yes, that
and that will be reflected in the next document that we get.
when the next document is out, whether we have the other right now tabled meeting or the one adopting it, you will have the final number in there. Yes.
And so my question is, are there additional changes that we should anticipate in addition to?
Oh, beyond that?
Yes.
No, unless we were to change G&A, which is, we're going to treat that as an item coming next year. No, this is it, except the tax levy dollar, it's levy calculation.
Okay.
It's okay. But nothing changing with this FTE count.
But sorry, I was just like, I know we're at the end to next step, so I was asking about the entire thing.
Gotcha.
Like, so I think that's one of the things that's been difficult to track is like, oh, what were we looking at last time? What are we looking at this time? So looking at the next one, the only thing.
There is one more FTE that we weren't able to include in this budget because if you add an FTE, it changes everything. We are looking to get some additional executive assistant help, but also have that person be the public records officer to take that burden off of Tracy Aga, who's our current public records officer. So that would be one more FTE that we will plug into the final budget.
There's no reason that the budget needs to be final for the public hearing. Like, we can make modifications between the public hearing and.
Oh, between this and then?
Yeah.
Unless Chris would like to chime in on that. He's a very quiet lawyer over there.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
So no changes on this. Next steps would be potentially the final a final adjustment meeting if we wanted to on the 18th. In light of those 2 points, if there is enough understanding that if you're comfortable with that those are what remains to be in the final draft, in the final budget for adoption, then staff recommendation would be that we don't necessarily need that, but that I don't want to overstep. And then November 25th would be the 2025 adoption of both the budget and the tax levy resolutions.
Commissioners, would you like to have some additional time at the work session on November 18th to talk about the budget?
I think we should allocate some for that.
And I personally don't think it needs to be a presentation, more of just if there's questions that need to be answered, given that there have continued to be changes.
Yeah, I think what we can do is just, if there are changes that are ready on the 18th, just highlight what those are and where they're reflected, and then just open it for what your questions are.
And I just want to say, Trisha mentioned the management slides and them making it less clear. I think they are useful and helpful, and I would encourage us to continue to thinking about the things from a management lens and an accounting lens. I think that the confusion came from the changes from the last meeting to this meeting, and we're pulling multiple levers, right? We're pulling the revenue from the warehouse and the Swantown. We're pulling the depreciation typo. So just that's the part that was confusing. I think the management slides are helpful personally.
And those are intended, again, from more of a private business point of view of where if you're looking for operational thoughts and how to move ahead, to strip out depreciation and not look at G&A, but purely look at those operations. That's the mindset behind those 2 slides. Sorry, I apologize if they're confusing.
I have a budget issue I'd like to flag, even if Director Smith decides she doesn't want to resolve it till later. In the fuel rates in the marina, Swantown Marina, our fuel dock gas station currently provides a bigger discount for larger gasoline purchases. So if you are a large yacht purchasing 300 gallons, you get 14 cents a gallon off. But if you're a regular runabout that, someone's using the marina, you pay more. It's a volume discount. I would like there to be a discussion and the budget says the director or the director's designee sets the fuel rates. Director Smith, I would like you to, at some point, come to us and explain if you plan to retain that, or consider doing a universal rate where it's the same price, whether you're a small guy or a big guy.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do that on November 18th.
Thank you.
And then if piggybacking on that, I would want to hear from Damien as to how that might impact sales. If then those with large fuel tanks are then able to just not get fuel here because those larger vessels can carry so much more fuel.
Right.
So I would be curious what the projected implications of that would be.
We'll take a look and put together what we can before Monday.
Thanks.
Does that need to be before Monday, or can we have that conversation in our retreat?
I leave that to the director's discretion.
Okay, we'll see what we can do by Monday. If it's more of an analysis, then we feel that comfortable doing by Monday, then we'll.
I would like to advocate for it not to be by Monday, for us to discuss it at the retreat, just kind of like Commissioner Ayala was saying about the revenue versus expenses versus FTEs, like, let's keep it how it is until we can have a meaningful generative conversation. Would you be comfortable with that?
Well, yeah, it doesn't, it's not set in the thing,
Right.
it's just at her discretion,
Right.
so I'm not asking to cabin the discretion. But I do want to know how the discretion is being exercised.
So I think I'm hearing consensus that it could be,
But meaning, so knowing how it currently, how it will be exercised, presumably it's status quo, you're
Right.
saying.
And I can chat with Damien and I can at least come forward with what rationale is for the current system.
Well, I'm pretty aware of the current rationale, so you're right, this is.
I don't know the.
This is, this is a conversation I'd like us to have during the retreat.
Okay, we'll have that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Cobb,
No, this is the sample motion language that comes with this level at this point in the meeting. It doesn't have to be read, but this is what you will end up, a sample of what you'll end up adopting through resolutions. And then we are on to more questions and comments. If there are more questions and comments.
are there any more questions or comments from the commission? All right, well, we are still in a public hearing, so and after all of that, we better ask if there's any public comment. Anyone like to make public comment?
Can we just do that on the budget?
We did.
But then we went through all of this,
I
so
see.
I just thought I would give somebody an opportunity to,
Well, I'll make a comment. I'll make 3 points that my own comments. I'd like to point out that this budget does not increase support debt at all. That this commission and what we have been doing over the last 2 years and the opportunity gives us the next 2 years of having a $4.2 million debt service. That in 3 years, in 2028, lowering that to 3.1 million. And then if we hold the course, you would be getting down to the point where you are down to only $800,000 in debt service by 2029 by not issuing new debt and surviving within our means. This budget also increases spending, which we've all seen significantly, but it's focused on profitability and operations as directed and intended, and also addressing deferred maintenance as necessary. And finally, I'd like to say, add to that, and hats off to Commissioner Ayala for calling me on the issue of the port reserve of $4 million that has been set for many years and the recalculation. And we have maintained it with this budget of now having a reserve of $12.4 million, which puts the port in a much stronger place. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No hands raised, so it appears we are finished with public comments, so this public hearing is now closed. Okay, moving on to commissioner reports and discussion. Commissioner Tong, would you have anything you'd like to share?
No, nothing to share, just excited for the forum for Thurston County tomorrow. Wealth transfer.
Okay. That's tomorrow. Oh, wow. Okay. Commissioner Sanders, anything?
I'm just excited that we had so many people come in and comment about the union, and so I'm really appreciate that we got to the phase that we're in and turning the page at the port. So I'm really happy for that.
Commissioner Vasavia?
Yeah, I think, this was one of the bigger hearings on the warehouse, and I think that question about would you do this if it were your own money is exactly the question kind of we ask ourselves as stewards, because it is the people's money, as we get to make these investments. And it's a privilege to do that, especially as staff gets better and better at how they brief the information. And so I really appreciate the work that's gone in that direction and what I saw of that town hall, which I did watch. So thank you. And then I would just say, I want my fellow commissioners to start to think about this. I don't believe that the long-term play for the Port of Olympia is our participation in global shipping and global trade. We're too small a player. There is inherent risk and vulnerability. And so I'd like to think, Director Smith, if there's a possibility through the master planning process, or if I have to bring like a little additional budget piece or what, but we heard today about the desire, like, why aren't we connecting up with forest products locally? Like, we can't just suddenly wag the dog and change the supply chains, but we can work concertedly on a couple of them for local resilience. And so I'd love to start figuring out who we can partner with to have those conversations.
I just want to say I appreciate this commission. We don't always agree. We ask different questions, and I think that I want to reflect back to the public that we may sometimes vote the same, we may sometimes vote different, but we are all, each and every one of us, doing our research, having the conversations, learning about these projects, and making thoughtful decisions as though it was our own money. So I'm very excited about the investment in the marine terminal today, both in, well, our whole, the ILW contract being one that has some broader reach, but the warehouse, the contract, it's a good day. So my quote of the day is Hippocrates. Before you heal someone, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that made him sick.
$1 million question right there, right?
Really a good one.
All right. Well, I'm just going to add that I'm just really appreciative of everybody who showed up tonight and at the public hearing. And we had a really real diverse set of opinions that gave their comments, and that's always helpful in making that decision for the commission. So appreciate all of that. Moving on now to other business. Is there any other business that we would like to bring up? Hearing none, let's move on to meeting announcements.
Righty. We have upcoming November 18th, a commission work session at 3:30 p.m. right here in the Olympics room. On November 19th at 6 p.m. is the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. On Monday, November 25th, we have our commission meeting where we present the final budget for adoption along with the tax levy. And then on Monday, December 9th, we have a regular business meeting of the commission at 5:30 p.m. I believe we only have one business meeting in December, and so that will be our meeting for December. So that is it.
Remind me, what's the work session on?
The work session, we have 3 items. We've got a legislative update from our state and federal lobbyists. Where I'd like to discuss the master plan and the commission's idea for the vision and / goal of the master plan. And then we also have a budget.
And would our next meeting then be January 13th?
Probably. Second Monday.
So yes?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?